I am a diehard fantasy reader. And the way I've come to understand it is it's like my escape from the ugliness of the world. Even though sometimes fantasy has the ugliness in it, the good guys always win.
When it comes to facing the ugliness in this world, Liz Roberts is on the front line. She is the CEO of Safe Horizon, the nation's largest provider of services for survivors of violence, abuse, and exploitation. Her purpose has created life-changing outcomes for so many. It almost feels magical.
We walk with survivors. We help them really understand all their options, figure out what safety plan will work best for them, and then to access the resources they need to make that a reality.
There's no reason to sugarcoat it. This work is hard, but when you're surrounded by people who share the same purpose, the load is easier to carry. I'm Camila Rente, and this is Impact After Hours, a show about pursuing a life of impact on and off the clock. Liz, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Camille. I'm looking forward to this.
Your organization is based in New York City, but can you tell us just a little bit about what exactly you do at Safe Horizon?
Yeah, so Safe Horizon is, as you said, the nation's largest provider of services for survivors of violence, abuse, and exploitation. We have about 800 staff spread all across New York City. We have a presence in every borough, in every neighborhood, literally. And what we do is support people who are in crisis because of some form of violence they've experienced. It could be children who have suffered abuse. It could be adults who have experienced domestic violence, sexual assault, or community violence, human trafficking. And we walk with survivors. We help them really understand all their options, figure out what safety plan will work best for them, and then to access the resources they need to make that a reality.
I assume it's far from easy, you know, the work that you do and, you know, the staff and the resources that everyone puts in, even I assume your personal well-being in some instances. How do you stay motivated as the leader of the organization?
I would say I have two answers to that. The first one, kind of on the day-to-day, what helps me stay really motivated and positive is the folks I work with. So I'm surrounded by people who are so dedicated and so compassionate and, you know, have their eyes on the prize in terms of the world we're trying to build. And so if my energy flags, I just think about them and I'm like, I can't let them down. I have to show up with all that I can bring today. And then the other piece of my motivation is really from personal experience. I grew up in a household where there was violence, and it had a big impact on me. And it took me time to unpack that and to do my own healing work. But what I realized at a very young age was that I wanted to make sure other families didn't go through that, and that so many people would be able to do so much more in the world if they didn't have that kind of early trauma in their lives. And so that's been just a core motivation for me since the beginning.
And in terms of the sort of larger scale of social impact, you work with victims, you work with your staff, obviously, but for those who aspire to do what you do, Liz, and maybe someday, one day, reach the level that you've reached. And I know that based on your career and the amount of time and experience that you've had in this type of work, that you have advice or some words of encouragement for anyone who's just starting out.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think it's sort of unusual for somebody's career to be quite as focused in one issue area as mine is, and it's not necessary. I think people who work in different issue areas also bring a lot, and many of my colleagues are like that here. But I think my most important advice is follow your passion, and after that, I would say find great supervisors. You know, every time I've interviewed for a job, I've really tried to understand, like, who is this person who is going to be my supervisor and what can I learn from them? And that has never led me wrong.
So finding your supervisors within the organization, or as you're trying to apply, I suppose, for a job in that organization, once you're inside, once you work for that nonprofit, let's say, maybe can you share like one sort of pro tip on how to advance in their career?
Well, I'm actually going to speak to people who are social workers or something like a social worker for a moment, because that's been part of my journey. And it's actually not that common for social workers like me to be in the CEO role in a big nonprofit. It's something that I'm proud of, to kind of represent my profession in that way. And I think a couple of things that really helped me advance were that I really, I'm comfortable with numbers, but also I really made a point of learning to understand the finance of government and nonprofits, and also learning to really understand data and to use data to inform decision making. So I think people have this view of social workers that we're not good at those things. And when we're good at those things, it really helps us to kind of be a well-rounded manager and leader.
What is something you believed 20 years ago that you don't believe now?
It's really interesting. I think the way that I think about how we help survivors of intimate partner violence has really evolved. So this isn't 20 years ago, this is 40 years ago. So full disclosure, I'm talking about a long time span. But when I was a young advocate working on, taking hotline calls from survivors, we were taught to basically discourage them from thinking that their abuser could change or would ever change. We were taught to say things like, if they said, well, where could my partner get help? We would say, oh, there's this organization that runs groups for people who we used to call them batterers, for batterers. And I'll give you the number, but you should know that 99% don't change. And that's literally what I believed. And I've come to understand that was misguided. People do change and grow. All domestic violence is not the same. And if we don't engage with people who cause harm around how they can change and improve their lives and their relationships, we're really missing the boat. And so I've come to think about that really differently.
Wow. And with your work now, is that something that you talk to your staff about regularly, and kind of in their training, and how they do speak to the victims and kind of help them through this process of healing?
It's really been a learning for us as an organization together. So I wouldn't even begin to say that I led the way on that. I've really learned from my colleagues. We have one program where we're doing restorative justice work with families. And so when it's right for the family, when the survivor feels it's safe and helpful, we will bring people together in a kind of restorative practice. And it's actually been a really hopeful area of our work, really encouraging. And we have to be careful. But the truth is, in so many cases, the survivor and the person who harmed them are going to stay in contact. Either in relationship or because they're co-parenting. And so if we're not willing to help with that, we're really leaving the survivor alone to struggle with that relationship.
Wow. And I think sort of a thread that I'm pulling as well from what you mentioned is nonprofits or any organization working on an issue like domestic violence. It can evolve.
Yes. It must evolve.
It must evolve. And it doesn't matter whether you've been around for 50, 100 years. Times change, and, society changes, sometimes quite rapidly. And so I suppose, your work has also shifted in some regard.
Yeah.
But Liz, we do need to set that aside for a moment, because we promised that we would learn more about you actually, and what makes you feel good outside of work, maybe, or even, you know, while you're doing your job at Safe Horizon. So are you ready to play with me?
I hope so.
And
I hope so. We'll see.
Let's start with a lightning round of questions, Liz. When you travel, Liz, are you an over or under packer?
I'm a very efficient packer and like really proud of it. I never check a bag.
You never check a bag.
I never check a bag. I've had bags lost, and it kind of wrecked, you know, at least 2 days of my time in a foreign city. So never.
What is your tip for being an efficient packer?
You know, don't worry too much about how I look, because that's not the point. It's comfortable clothes that mix and match with each other.
Got it. So I guess like if you're putting together your wardrobe, I think they might call it something like a capsule wardrobe where you can mix and match and it doesn't need to follow a certain like trend or something. Great tip. Okay. This one we have to think about a little bit. Out of these 3, which one will you keep, delete, and postpone? By the way, this is work related. Emails on Mondays, 5 meetings on a Friday, and quick check-ins that are never quick. Which one would you keep, delete, and postpone?
I would actually keep the quick check-ins that are never quick, because those tend to be really interesting conversations. Unplanned, unscripted, you know, just like we need to catch up and talk about something that's going on.
That is so true. Just, you know, based on our experience at Hueman Group Media, we have Monday check-ins, which is our weekly staff meeting, production meeting. But most of the hour is spent talking about what one of our producers did over the weekend, and then it spirals or, you know, transforms into a different type of conversation. And so anytime we say quick at Hueman Group Media, it is never quick.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
But it is very interesting.
Yes.
And then would you delete or postpone either emails on Mondays or 5 meetings on a Friday?
You know, the truth is I'm the kind of diligent worker who would take both of those challenges and just like do them. Like I probably have 8 meetings on most Fridays, but if I were really speaking from the heart, I would postpone the Friday meetings and delete the Monday emails. Absolutely would love to do that at some point in my life.
Okay, what music genre best describes your personality?
Oh, interesting. I'm going to go with jazz because I love it. But also, like, you know, people describe me as calm.
Okay.
And so some jazz, you know, that kind of mellow background jazz, it works.
Well, I love that. You know, if I were to give that answer, I'd feel like cool. I'd feel like, okay, people can see me as that genre. You could also maybe say, I don't know if this is the case for you, Liz, but maybe there's a little bit of spontaneity. Do you feel like you're a little bit spontaneous or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Then that is the answer. Okay. So moving on, Liz, we talked a little bit about, I think when you were sharing with us your advice to people who work in social impact or who want to advance in their careers, learning is, you know, probably a constant thing. Mm-hmm. And that does take you to places, and that, you know, whether it's within your organization or outside. But if you were offered a free intensive course on any subject, what would you choose to learn about?
Oh my God, I love that question. There are a lot of things I would love to learn about. My first thought was like a deep dive on child development. Then I was like, that's too serious. So my second thought is French.
That is my first thought. And I don't know if it's still possible for me to get really good at it, but
Sure it is.
Well, I hope so, because I think I've been trying to learn for maybe a decade now. It's the time. In this scenario, we are assuming that you also have the time to actually learn the subject. So
I immediately imagined a sabbatical with like full-time immersive learning.
Yep.
And so for a language, that would be perfect.
I think that's the way to really get good at it, is to speak to people. Okay, so speaking of a sabbatical, walk us through your dream vacation. Where are you going, for how long, and what are the top 3 things you're going to do?
Is there a kind of a time limit or a price limit?
None. Let's
All right.
let's not put a limit on anything.
So I would start out in the Greek islands and maybe do like some boating on the Mediterranean and some strolling in like ancient villages and ruins. Then I would go to Thailand just in time. There's an annual festival of like vegetarian food in a particular city in Thailand. So I would go there in time for that festival and just like eat lots of delicious Thai vegetarian food. And then maybe I would end in Kauai, like in a beautiful beachfront location.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right?
That is a dream itinerary, I think, in each location. I love how you went from Greece and then all the way to Asia.
Why not, right?
Exactly. You know, we can dream it up, and hopefully one day, we get to actually live and see it all unfold.
And there was a logical progression around the globe. I just want to remind you, it's like, cross the Atlantic, get to East Asia, cross the Pacific, and, come back home after that.
Before we let you go officially, one question I ask all of our guests is if they have their go-to after-hours media. What have you been watching, reading, or listening to lately?
Great question. I am watching The Morning Show.
The Morning Show.
On Apple TV, and I love it. I love these powerful, complicated women, just trying to change the world and kind of tripping over each other and themselves. It's a lot of fun. So that's a big favorite. When it comes to reading, I am a diehard fantasy reader. And the way I've come to understand it is it's like my escape from the ugliness of the world. Even though sometimes fantasy has the ugliness in it, the good guys always win.
What's the most recent fantasy book you've read?
Oh, I just read this amazing series. The first one is called Black Sun. And it's a series of fantasy novels set in like pre-Columbian South America, and it's incredible.
Wow. And anything that you've been listening to lately? Jazz?
I have to admit, I'm listening to this podcast about menopause and health.
Okay.
And it just like covers all these things that my doctors haven't necessarily talked to me about, that my mother certainly didn't talk to me about. And that even like with my friends the same age, we don't necessarily talk about the transformative power of vaginal estrogen cream, for example.
Okay.
So there you go.
I will emphasize, though, the power of podcasts then. I know I'm biased. We have been doing this for, 8 years, soon it'll be a decade, but I love that you have that on-demand kind of like companion.
Totally. And you can get information out faster than if you wrote a book.
Or go to the doctor because...
Yeah, exactly. Getting an appointment, so hard.
Oh my gosh. I can relate so much to that. But Liz, this has been lovely. Anything that you want to share, like a final sort of message or anything that might be coming up for you at Safe Horizon that people can watch out for?
Well, we're living in a time where immigrant communities are under threat and are deeply afraid. And the same could be said for LGBTQ communities of color broadly. And Safe Horizon is here. We're not going anywhere. We are able to walk people through a range of options to find the ones that feel safe and right to them. And so I want people to know that, and there are organizations like us all over the country. And, the other thing is just a reminder, like, so many of us are survivors and we rarely talk about it with colleagues and friends. And it's so powerful to have that sense of community, to remember that you're not alone. So I just want to encourage people to think about that. Like, what community do I have?
Yeah. And I think anyone who's listening to our podcast, to this episode in particular, if they have had that experience in the past or they are currently experiencing it, I hope hearing your voice, Liz, and hearing your story and us talking to each other maybe encourages them in some way to open up and tell someone. Liz, thank you so much for joining me on Impact After Hours.
Thank you, Camille. This was fun.